Chapter 1. Two Jokers in the Same Deck. Is it really impossible to come into contact with the gaming table without at once becoming infected with superstition? Fyodor Dostoevsky, The Gambler. The successful card shark is an expert in plausible deniability. The most successful card sharks are those who control the game, and the game was this: milk the big fish. A big fish needs bait. The more succulent and desirable the bait, the more likely a catch is. Sometimes a winning streak at the tables is truly a winning streak. Sometimes it is bait. That afternoon in Caesar's palace, the streak was bait, and the fish was a satellite mobster of the Russians. The card shark was one Melor Romanov. Now, Mel wasn't doing well. Though he was savvy enough not to show it, he wasn't doing bad, but he wasn't doing well. In his mid-30s, Melor could have passed for 10 years either direction. He kept himself mostly healthy, skinny and clean-shaven. He didn't dress up or down, but reasonably and professionally forgettable. He played cards like he played chess, giving away as little as possible, or at least seeming to. Mel knew the fish, and much better than the crew he was press-ganged into by local wise guys. He was indeed in the operation against his will, but only just. The wrinkle was, the fish also knew Mel. Right now, only Melor and the fish were aware of this, and maybe one or two other guppies in the hidden school the fish brought with him to the poker chip seas. No one on Mel's team knew, though, or they wouldn't have put him on the table. The implications were pretty staggering. Sometimes you lose a hand to hide your tells or establish a bluff. Sometimes you sacrifice a pawn. Sometimes you sacrifice a queen. Sometimes you walk into somebody else's trap because you've got your own trap. As regarded Green Colia, this was the case. Mel knew half a dozen guys in the room were on the crew he had been pulled into. They were on his side. One of the wise guys was actually employed with Caesar's palace, though he was from a different gang than those at Caesar's. Since this was an extraterritorial operation, a couple ladies of the night were in on the op as well. The room had 5 tables, about 200 people in various states of exaltation and seriousness, and where all the action was, where Mel was, were a nest of vipers. Mel's part in the operation was to lose, and to do so with a variety of exhortations in Russian to the mark, the fish, which he did right on script, and which his fish reciprocated to no one's astonishment. "How's the border game these days, by the way?" Melor asked, checking the bet with his fingers on the table. The bet checked twice more until it came to the fish, Nikolai Petrovich Blavatsky, Green Colia, as he was known. He was a man as big as his name. He caught Mel's eye and smiled through a wide face under a bald head tattooed in scars. "Lucrative," he replied, and pushed a $5,000 chip into the pot. The bet came around. It was on Mel to fold or call. He called. "But it's chilly." One of the two players between Melor and Colia also called the bet, leaving 3 in the round for the next card. Green Colia replied, "It's Russia," and examined his new card. Mel had a flush, royal and spaded. It was a rare big hand, his first good one, and he was going to have to fold it. He could take Green Colia, but the crew would think he had gone rogue and would be thrown. Meanwhile, Green Colia would know Melor was changing the game's dynamics and would suspect a caper. He would take his trophy regardless, but there would be business with Mel afterward, business of an unwelcome extracurricular variety. Though, now Melor thought about it, the same would happen if he played his part. He was in a box, a serious box, and he knew it. He would need a miracle. Experienced though he was, Melor's composure was fleeing, and his soul did, perhaps even subconsciously, cry out. Somewhere, That little boy that got stuck in the mad world and now had to endure it to adulthood was still alive. And he said something to the effect of, "Well, God, now how am I supposed to act?" But this was all in his inner monologue and far at the back of it. A half dozen other mental conversations were taking place in his head collateral to this plea. For example, he knew he couldn't inform his crew that in fact they were being targeted, because if he did that, Kolya would certainly kill him. He also knew he couldn't side with Kolya. His crew would then don the murder hat and he'd get it from that end. Though to be sure, their response would be less severe than Kolya's. There was a reason Mel was in America in the first place. He needed a way out. The hand had to be ruined, the game had to end, he had to run. With wise guys outside the game all around, he couldn't just leave for the restroom and split, they'd keep him in. He'd need something big to happen, something none could reckon with. He'd need an earthquake or an air raid. The bet came round again. Mel caught Green Kolya's eye, pushed another $5,000 chip in and said, "Well, God bless Russia." Kolya held eye contact for a second too long, enough to communicate just what kind of trouble Mel was about to be in. Behind him, a man in Caesar's palace uniform that said Tanner suddenly made eyes at Mellor, but it was too late. The bet went to the remaining player at the table between Mel and Kolya, a Japanese man with a loud golden pen in his shirt pocket that said Las Vegas on the clip, and emotions of stone. He carefully considered his position. The Japanese man was about to make a move when there was a popping sound like pressure changing in a wide space, followed by a wet liquid noise, and abruptly, right atop the poker table, a Technicolor portal out of a horror movie opened from nowhere, spitting out what appeared to be a government agent with a red mustache, mirrored sunglasses, and a kitten. The little black cat came first, tumbling end over end through the portal and landing right in front of Mel. The man with the red mustache followed immediately after, bellowing, "Nobody move! FBI!" He was covered in suds. A multicolored soap of a kind that was indefinable hissed like carbon dioxide in a soda can. Abruptly, the cat puked all over Mel's flush. The portal snapped closed with another thumping sound, and a violet coruscation of light temporarily blinded everyone. The cat ran to the end of the table, and the man with the mustache, covered in suds, ran after, but wasn't fast enough to stop the cat from doing a swan dive off the edge. The man with the Tanner name tag tried to obstruct the mustachioed interloper as he ran across the table, reaching out and yelling, "Hey, hold it, stop!" Mustache half kicked him in the head, using his face like a stepping stone and dancing off the green felt, then snatching the cat, rolling and fluidly rising again with a gun, which he immediately discharged 3 times into the ceiling, causing everyone in the room to duck, shriek, and scatter. Melor Romanov took his opportunity. He grabbed as many poker chips as he could from the table and split, heading the opposite direction of the portal man and his barfing cat. Mel beat it for a kitchen door to a smoker's haunt that doubled as a fire escape. Surveillance certainly recorded his exit, but plenty of chaos as well. It didn't matter if the wise guys in the casino crew were after him now. The Russian mob was a bigger problem. They were there for the wise guys. He was just a bottom feeder caught with the rest of the tuna in a net. If Green Kolya's presence were any indication, there was a possibility of ownership change at Caesar's palace very soon. Even worse than that, though, Kolya and Mel shared a secret. Mel was supposed to be dead. And he would be very soon if he did not get out of Las Vegas and as far away from Sin City as was absolutely possible. It was a pity. He'd invested several years to hit any sort of rhythm in the region's underbelly. It looked very much as though he would have to start over yet again. He wondered if he would get a freebie when his start again punch card were filled. The mystery of the teleporting man was indeed intriguing. In fact, it was terribly strange and inexplicable on some level. Mellor knew he would have to face up to what he just saw, and he expected that whatever events were interlinked with this situation, he was not done with them just yet. But there are only so many emergencies a human mind can process in a day, and Mel was approaching his threshold. His first priority was to get off the strip, and he had to get rid of his phone. It was a burner anyway. Mel tossed the phone in a storm drain at the bottom of the fire escape, coming around a corner to a staff parking lot. The sirens were wailing in earnest. He could see red and blue lights rushing past the exit of the lot, even in the middle of the day. Then there were running boots. Mel had a split second to figure out his cover. Then the cops came around the corner. Freeze! Mel made a show of terror. The guy's got a gun! He's got a gun! He fired it at the roof! Up there! Up there! 4 cops peeled off from several others headed up the road. The one who shouted kept his weapon trained on Mel. He said to his fellows, "Get up there!" Then turned back to Mel. How many? I don't know. I saw one guy, red mustache. He said it was FBI. FBI? Yes. They're already on him? No, the FBI guy is the shooter. Where are you from with that accent? Canada. Canada? Eh? The cop squinted at him. Then his radio made a noise. We're in pursuit. Get to the food court. We have a report in the food court, west side. He leaned into his radio. Coming up, over, then gestured with his gun at Mel. You get out of here. The situation is under control. And he ran up the fire escape. Mel walked slowly with the show of the terror he evinced earlier. As soon as the cop was out of range, he bolted around the corner to the east. This sent him right toward the strip, but the exit to the interstate south and west of Caesar's Palace would not be passable for a time. He'd have to find Tom and move the poker chips in his pocket. Tom would know the chips were authentic, and he could trade them for cash in Caesar's. Tom did that kind of thing all the time with the tweakers about town. But Tom was 10 miles away in a neighborhood called Whitney, north of Henderson, and it was indeed hot. Mel kept running until he put a block between himself and the strip. He had a few hundred in cash and occupational necessity in his line of work. There was a thrift store half a mile to the north and east from where he was. He had already put as much distance between himself and Caesar's Palace. Keeping to back roads and parking lots, Mel quickly made his way there and spent $20 on the only bike he could find with decent tires. It would be the same price as a cab, but they wouldn't be on him as fast. Mel was known to most and seedier circles through town. Las Vegas is a huge city, but it's a huge city built on tourism and industry supporting that tourism. Year-round residents have a cadre of intersecting floating communities. While not always friendly, people do tend to remember one another. Mel couldn't risk any smartphone ride services for a variety of reasons, not least of which his abandoned phone. He couldn't risk a cab or take a ride on the tram across Bellagio. Someone might know him. His present vehicle was a no-go because it was new and easy to follow on the web. Options were limited. His crew were clever, their bosses were even more clever, and the Russian mob was like the gangster CIA. In all likelihood, they knew he would be at that table. Kolya registered no surprise on seeing Mellor, who was ostensibly dead many years. While he doubted he was the sole aim of Kolya's ambitions, Mel would certainly be a fine bonus trophy. The neighborhood called Whitney was diagonally situated from his present position, but this was to Mel's benefit. There was a hidden way across town. Mel made his way to the culverts underground. It was good, just as he was leaving Caesar's Palace, that the cop's radio distracted him from taking Mel more seriously. He wasn't a shooter, but he was a person of interest, and was always armed to the teeth. This was the case now. Mel peddled the cheap fixed-gear conglomeration of jangling stickers and tweaker sweat from the thrift store with a precise, determined speed. Gripped in his right hand at his lap was a cheap pistol, 9mm. His left was on the handlebars, and his eyes were sharp as diamonds in the twilight of the drainage tunnels. Every now and again, he'd have to dismount and walk the bike down a set of stairs or over a cement deck. He knew the route. There shouldn't have been any permanent residents in this area of the drainage system, as to the southeast of the network was low ground where water was deliberately channeled. Such areas were more prone to inundation during the city's brief wet season. Still, he passed a good 30 persons in worse shape than himself and wondered how much fentanyl was in the vicinity. Most avoided him and yelled insults to his back. There was an intersection, and a man came out at him from the darkness like a rabid dog, yelling at him, "Get the hell out of here! Get out! Get out! Get out!" Mel fired one shot that made a sparking ricochet on the cement near his feet, inducing a reaction like a spasm and waking people up half a mile away in the system. The gun was powerful loud, and its reverberating bark certainly had the desired deterrent effect. No other substantial incidents impeded him. He came out of the culvert in a prefab neighborhood and left the bike behind for a mole person to find. The daylight was blinding for an instant as his eyes readjusted. Up from the culvert, there were plenty of passerby, plenty of impatient drivers, and plenty of heat waves from the relentless Las Vegas sun. Mel didn't see anybody that concerned him. He was looking for guys on fixed-gear bikes like the one from the thrift store he just abandoned. They were usually part of gangs. They were selling, and they were keeping their blocks clear of would-be competitors. They had to use bikes because none of them could drive legally. In Las Vegas, a given neighborhood either has an ice cream truck or one of these guys. Mel didn't see anybody and jumped over a fence to a number of backyards which were clearly neglected. Tom's was the fourth one on the left. Mel went to a sliding door covered in blinds and knocked on the glass. It took a minute, but Tom showed up, clearly having just rolled out of bed with gray stubble, a wife beater, stained boxers, and a robe he stole from a hotel somewhere. He opened the slider in a way that was communicative, if comical. "Mel, you ain't putting money in my pocket. I better never see your tracksuit vodka-sucking commie ass again." "It's your lucky day, for I have money and no tracksuit, and Mark's was a fop." "Why didn't you say so? Come in. Fix yourself a drink. Give me a sec. I gotta piss." Tom shuffled off, yawning and scratching a bald spot. Mel pushed his way through swinging blinds, quickly slid the door shut to keep the cool air in, and immediately began unloading his pockets on a table built into Tom's unit. Like every other on the block, this house was a cookie-cutter cottage prefabricated into mediocrity several years before. As he unloaded, Mel said, "Listen, Tom, today I skipped the drink. It is not social call. I have to move." Tom was still yawning as he shuffled out of the bathroom, checking his phone. He blinked a few times. Hey, you know Antonio's looking for you." "One reason you are getting money from me is to forget that." "Oh!" Tom looked up from the phone for the first time, started to understand his situation, and quickly his eyes moved to the table where Mel had offloaded his poker chips. The phone was forgotten and fell on an easy chair that probably spent more time in the street than indoors before Tom got a hold of it. He leaned over the table. "There's what? You got at least 50. Jeez! Are they all $5,000? You got $250,000 there." "No, Tom. You have $250,000. Just give me any cash you have." Tom blinked at him, then finished the thought internally, turned around, locked the door to his bathroom, and came out a moment later with 5 tightly bundled stacks of bills. "My exchange rate is 60%, he began. "With the bargain. Plus time and trouble, a convenience fee, and of course I'm going to have to clean up the cash myself, so here's 80 large. Mel snatched it greedily. "Thank you, and when you send your man into Caesar's, find the cage with Anya. Tell her Green Collier is succubat. She'll know what you mean. Your wish is my command, but say, if I'm reading this right, maybe I ought to just go get my cash and not talk to anybody's about it." Tom was rummaging about a freezer for a spirit of some variety. "Do as you like. That's just a pickup line for Anya in case I'm ever back in town." "Well, hell, ballsy, but I guess if Collier doesn't get you in about the next 20 minutes, he never will." "And that's the idea. До свидания." And Mel backed out the slider with the 80 grand, beating it for the far fence of the neighborhood's identical backyards. The next move was to find a local private mechanic and take one of the vehicles some tweaker abandoned when a check engine light came on alongside a meth binge. There were always 1 or 2 cars at private shops that were fixed and sitting and would be that way forever until the chief grease monkey decided to sell them. "Full auto transmission tires and engine repair," read the sign, with each initial in red text and a fluffy acronym at the top, "Full Service Fatters." It was certainly an angle. Mel knew the place. In 15 minutes, he had a set of keys, a late 90s 4-door with a rebuilt engine, and a blank spot where 80 grand previously took up space in his vest pocket. The car was worth maybe $1,000, but the other 7 went to lost paperwork. Just had to get him over the Mexico border anyway and turn over one more time, because he wasn't about to travel anywhere further till dark. He needed to park somewhere. There was a bank and a shopping center with a free garage. Mel knew none of the vendors there were affiliated with mob activity. He found the garage, parked behind a support pillar in the corner, curled up in the back under his vest, and thought repetitive thoughts until he was able to drift off. He woke with a start at 3 a.m. to the noise of sloppy, homeless courtship somewhere else in the facility. Electing not to investigate, he jumped out of the back seat, stretched, spit, cracked a few knuckles and joints, and then eased into the driver's seat and hit the road. At night, AC would not be an issue, and they were unlikely to identify him on the highways immediately, especially in such a clownish conglomeration of rust and sadness as that particular vehicle. He took Highway 95 south to Bullhead and stayed with it until he crossed Interstate 10. 6 hours in, no cops, no mobsters, no Russians. They probably raided his apartment already. A few Italian or Russian Goombas were no doubt irritated he didn't make his way back to the SUV in the garage of Caesar's Palace. Bought cops were definitely looking for him, but they're going to start on the main streets first, owing to the law of averages. In a few hours, he hit Yuma, Arizona, just short of San Luis. He ditched the four-door and made his way over the border. Border crossings were a cinch in summer of 2023, but one simply had to decide to cross. It was late morning by then, and the border town was fully awake. Mel made his way to a Mexican auto dealer where he was able to get twice the car he just ditched at the border for another $2,000. In less than 24 hours, Mel was halfway through Mexico with his own transportation and a little under 70 large remaining. If he could make it to Panama in the next week, he would be all right. Starting over, no big deal. This had to be the 10th time since he was a kid. But who was that mustached man with the cat? The longer, mellower Romanov thought about it, the more uneasy he became.